Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan L. Walton, and I am the Plummer Professor of Christian Morals and Nathan Pusey Minister here at the Memorial Church at Harvard University. On behalf of President Drew Gilpin Faust, Mr. Glenn Hutchins, and Professor Henry Louis Gates, Jr., it is my honor and my privilege to welcome you all to the 2016 Hutchins Center Honors. Being the pious and praying man that he is, Professor Gates has asked me to open this occasion with a word of prayer. I felt that no better way to open than with the spiritual reflection of one of our greatest alums, to the one for whom this award is named, William Edward Burghardt Du Bois. This is a prayer published in his collection, Prayers for Dark People. And I discovered it and saw it and view it as particularly appropriate for the times that we now face on this campus and in our world. Let us please assume a posture of prayer, meditation, and/or reflection. Grant us, O God, the vision and the will to be found on the right side in the great battle for bread. The bread and the battle that rages all around us in strife, in turmoil, and in litigation. Let us remember that no impossible wisdom is asked of us in this moment, but rather you only ask of us thine ancient sacrifice, to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly. You ask of us, may we refuse to use the world's goods more than we earn. May we be generous with those that earn but a little. And may we avoid the vulgarity that flaunts wealth, clothes, and ribbons, particularly in the face of poverty. These things, O God, are the sins that lie beneath our labor wars. And from these sins, O God, please defend us. But most importantly, please have mercy on us. May we all say together, amen.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Glenn Hutchins. Reverend Walton, thank you, sir. My mother had a rule for life, which was always to make sure that your doctor and your preacher were younger than you. So Reverend Walton is now my preacher. I want to welcome everybody to the 4th Annual Hutchins Center Honors. Over the past 3 years, from this stage, we've awarded 22 W.B. Du Bois medals to a dazzling array of thinkers, artists, writers, musicians, activists, and public servants. This afternoon, we add 8 more names to that list, and we are thrilled. We're honored to be in their presence. Thank you for coming. A couple of quick notes. The great Jessie Norman had hoped and tried to be with us today, but her health would simply not permit it. But she's here in spirit. Her voice will reverberate in this room, and President Faust will present the medal her medal in absentia, and afterwards we'll hear a special collection of her clips, which will remind us why we're adding her to the list of W.B. Du Bois medal winners. Also, we have 2 medalists seated at the end here today to my left, David Lattin and Willie Worsley, who represent an entire team. It's the first time we've ever had an entire team. So they are here representing a much larger group than themselves, who work together to make history, as we'll learn later, and to do nothing less than show the country that racism has no place in our institutions, and especially not in our athletic contests. You'll hear more about that later on. Before we start, I'd like to offer a special thanks to President Faust and Dean Michael Smith. Mike, where are you? I know you're out there somewhere. Over here, there he is. Their presence here today underscores how deeply Harvard supports African and African American studies. The two most important leaders of Harvard have been to this event every year, and we think your actions speak much louder than words. And this dynamic, ever-evolving field has two great champions in President Faust and Dean Smith, and we're deeply grateful for that. Thank you very much. I also want to thank the members of the National Advisory Board of the Hutchins Center who are with us this afternoon. Their generous contributions, both financial and intellectual, have made this center a vibrant part of this campus. So thank you very much for your support and your presence. As we've done in the past, today we'll intersperse the medal presentations with readings from W.B. Du Bois, and this year we'll have some music as well. Just as we began with the glorious Kuumba singers, they will sing us out at the end of today. So without further ado, allow me to introduce my good and great friend, university professor, the founding director of the Hutchins Center, and a person who I regard to be a national treasure, Henry Louis Gates Skip, Jr.
Thank you, Glenn. President Faust, Dean Smith, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for my friend Glenn Hutchins and for the 2016 recipients of the Hutchins Center's Honors W.E.B. Du Bois Medal. Please give it up. Now, there are a lot of humanity types in this room, including me, but at least some of you may have seen the Wall Street Journal this morning or CNBC at 8 a.m., which announced, you ready for this, that the Hutchins Family Foundation has donated another $10 million to the Hutchins Center for African and African American Research. Now, you might remember that the Hutchins Family Foundation donated $15 million to launch the center 3 years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about a cumulative donation of $25 million in support of African, Afro-Latin American, and African American research at Harvard University. This level of generosity toward our field is unprecedented, it is unheard of, it is sui generis in the history of the American Academy. This gift will sustain the Hutchins Center in perpetuity. 1,000 years from now, there will be a Hutchins Center because of this man's generosity. And Glenn's partner and wife of my dear friend, Debbie Hutchins, is in the front row. She's going to kill me, but you got to give it up for Debbie, too. Please. And you got to stand up. Please. I'll pay for that, I know. The Hutchins Center also relies on the support, as Glenn said, of our dedicated and generous National Advisory Board. Without that advisory board, we wouldn't be here in this room this afternoon. And some of the members of the board travel from across the country today to be here. Would you all, each of you who is here, a member of the board, please stand up. Please stand up. I know you don't want to do this, but stand up. Give it up for our National Advisory Board, please. But ladies and gentlemen, donations have value only if there is a supportive structure behind those donations. We couldn't ask for more enthusiastic, more thoughtful partners in this endeavor than President Drew Faust and Dean Michael Smith. President Faust is an historian of the Civil War whose own intellectual career has been devoted to telling stories
that hadn't always been told before. That we have her support in doing precisely that at the Hutchins Center across a variety of disciplines and geographies means more to our field than I can say. And Dean Smith is an engineer. An engineer wants to know how things work. And for us, that means that he looks a lot at our bank account. But he also helps us to do long-range planning. We have over $50 million in endowment funds now, and I'm proud to say that Dean Smith, like President Faust, has also provided us with generous support. And this institutional generosity has helped us to achieve the solid footing that we're on today. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for President Drew Faust and Dean Michael Smith, please. You know what it's like to teach at a place where African and African American studies is not on the periphery, not ghettoized as it were, but is at the center of a liberal arts education, and it's because of President Faust and Michael Smith. Now, a big chunk of Glenn's new gift will fund a new research project, a project that University Professor William Julius Wilson has designed in collaboration with several of Harvard's other leading sociologists, the project on race and cumulative adversity. It is the 11th research unit housed in the Hutchins Center. Professor Wilson's project looks at the racial dynamics of urban inequality and cumulative adversity and seeks to pioneer a new kind of policy-oriented research, one that will play a dominant role in public conversations and policy debates. It brings together Harvard's leading experts, who happen to be among the nation's leading experts in urban poverty, race and ethnic relations, criminal justice, employment, unemployment, housing, community and family social supports, as well as social policies affecting the poor, with the aim of developing more synchronized efforts to address both poverty and inequality. Professor Wilson's project comes at a time when there are more successful Black people than ever before in this country. But ladies and gentlemen, there are still far too many Black people dwelling on the bottom. Their opportunities to move up seemingly non-existent. For example, the number of Black children living in poverty has hardly changed since that terrible day in 1968 when Dr. King was so brutally assassinated. This is just wrong. And now is the time for those of us who have found success, primarily because those of us of color have benefited from affirmative action. And it's time for us to intervene from within to form coalitions and movements that will affect real change in the Black community, in which too many are still suffering, despite the heights to which some of us have climbed. In 1903, the great Du Bois called for the talented 10th, the college-educated sector of the African American people who were working their way out of the deprivation of previous generations to step up and use their gifts of education and opportunity to lend a hand up to their poorer brothers and sisters, to lift as they climbed, as we put it. In 1948, he expressed disappointment that far too many didn't heed this call, putting their own personal gain above the uplift of their community and their kin. I think Dr. Du Bois would be heartened, ladies and gentlemen, not only by his fellow sociologist, Professor Wilson's project, but even more so by the new wave of Black activism that has transformed college campuses across the country. Black Lives Matter is Du Bois's talented 10th in jeans and hoodies. And while this new movement has embraced people from all walks of life, it was largely begun by college-educated young people, precisely those whom Dr. Du Bois had called on more than a century ago to be the change. Black Lives Matter has transformed the country as well. The movement has made us look at ourselves and at each other, and it has shown us in vivid, sometimes brutal detail that we all can do more. At a moment when even Randall Stephenson, the CEO of AT&T, is moved to speak out in favor of this kind of cross-cultural conversation about race, we know the time to act is right now. In his widely circulated remarks to several hundred AT&T employees, he said, and I quote, "How could I not understand the very core that inform my friends, black friends, worldview about race? I wondered," he said, "how two very close friends, one black, one white, could never have discussed the matter of race. And then I thought, if two very close friends of different races don't talk openly about this issue, the issue that's tearing our communities apart, how do we expect to find common ground and solutions for what is a really serious problem? Let us move forward from Stevenson's sage directive. Tolerance," he concluded, "is for cowards. Being tolerant requires nothing from you but to be quiet and not make waves." Ladies and gentlemen, Black Lives Matter, and Black Studies matters. Through the generous support of Glenn and Debbie Hutchins and their family, and the institutional support of this administration, the Hutchins Center is sending this message out boldly and proudly to the world. With the W.E.B. Du Bois Medal, the center honors those and recognizes those who are doing this work along with us. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask that we now turn our attention to this extraordinary assemblage on this stage as we proceed with the Hutchins Center honors. And to start us off, please give a warm welcome to my dear friend, Professor Cornel West, a philosopher who fearlessly speaks truth to power.
What a blessing, what an honor, and what a privilege to stand here and be able to salute my dear brother David Evans. But I'll begin by acknowledging the high quality leadership of my dear brother Skip Gates, who I've known for 30 years. Give it up for Skip, he's still on fire. 30 years later. It's a delight to meet Brother Glenn Hutchins. I've never had a chance to meet him or his wonderful wife, but we do salute your generosity and your deep commitment and conviction in trying to sustain the truth-telling and bear witnessing that is so badly needed all around the country, every corner of the globe, as well as this grand institution. And last but not least, of course, is the captain of the ship, my dear sister, President Drew Gilpin Faust. Give it up for our dear president. But language fails me. Words fall far short to talk about David Evans. He's the one and only. He is the inimitable one. I met him 46 years ago, and he's got the same smile. Oh, yes, same dignity, same determination. He's the first black man I ever met who graduated from Princeton. I said, maybe I need to go to Princeton. But David Evans comes from a great tradition. He and I are a very small part of. We come from a people who've been terrorized, traumatized, and stigmatized for 400 years, but still, though hated and too often taught the world so much about love. So when I look at David Evans, I see John Coltrane's Love Supreme all in him. I see Toni Morrison's Beloved all in him. And I see Emmett Till's mother saying at the funeral, I don't have a minute to hate, I will pursue justice for the rest of my life. We know Brother David Evans is from Gut Bucket, Jim Crow, Arkansas. Phillips County, the site in 1919 with that Elaine race riot in which more black people were killed in any other moment in American history. But look at him, he's still got style. He's got dignity. Look at him, he's still on fire for justice. That's our brother David Evans. It's true. In the face of the social misery, we get the sophisticated linguistic delicacy of David Evans. In the face of that unbelievable suffering, we get the empathy. We get the sensitivity of David Evans. And he didn't do it all by himself. He had magnificent parents, as you know, who died young, but had siblings that raised each other. Aunts and uncles who kicked in, and then on to Tennessee State. My parents went to Fisk. Tennessee's on the other side of town, same chocolate side of Nashville, Tennessee, studying engineering early on, and then on to Princeton with MA in engineering, and then we were so blessed under the leadership of Derek Bach and the others, and especially our dear Mormon brother, we shall never forget, Chase Peterson, who said, I discern in this brilliant, in this loving, in this sacrificial, in this service-oriented black brilliant brother from Arkansas, a partner in reshaping late modern Harvard, and that's precisely what he did. He arrived in 1970. To this very moment, 15 times number of black students who have gained access to Harvard than during the 334 years in the history of Harvard. That is David Evans, Chase Peterson, Dean Fitzsimmons, and so many others. Oh yes, my brother. Oh yes, they did it together. That's the best of Harvard, veritas. Truth, the condition of truth is always to allow suffering to speak. That's why I can go on and on and on. I told him I'm ready to sing a song. I brought my guitar. I'm ready to salute my but David Evans will forever be in the annals of this institution because he allowed for the black freedom movement to overflow into the Harvard elite halls, and he did it with such humility. He did it with an openness. He did it with the best of what black people in this nation have always been about, which is fundamentally about that love and that justice being what love looks like in public. Just as you can see, the style and the smile is what. Give it up for David Evans. He is going to be W.E.B. Du Bois Medal honoree. Come on up, my brother.
Thank you, Cornel. Thank you, buddy. Over here. Thank you. That was beautiful. Yeah, we don't make any remarks. We just put it on. Yeah, put it on. Yeah, and then you say something. But then you take your turn. Yeah. Gotta look over there.
Well, I don't know how long I have, but I grew up in the Baptist church in rural Arkansas, so I can't clear my throat in 30 minutes. But when I hear the almost embarrassing compliments from Cornel, whom I have known for almost half a century, and that same summer I met another young man who was a pre-med from Yale. He was up here in Harvard Summer School. And organic chemistry made a professor of literature out of him. There he is. I think of those three one-word question sentences, interrogative sentences that I grew up with. Whence, where, and whither. Whence we came. Whence this department came, whence we as a people came. We know where we came from unimaginable bondage. Where we are, we're a long way from where we once were. We're not where we want to go, but we're a long way. Who could have ever thought that we would have an African-American president and also have a woman who's president of Harvard, have had a woman president of Princeton, a woman president of Brown, and a woman president of the University of Pennsylvania, and two black governors of those commonwealths, Virginia and Massachusetts. They did so much, some of those strugglers, with so little. We should be able to do everything with nothing. And I ask you to try to impart that to the young people, that we've changed the guard. I've told Drew this, and I've lived with it all my life, that a changing of the guard without a guarding of the change is movement without maintenance, and it might be self-destructive. So all I ask of you here tonight is whether we are changing, whether we are attending, but also maintain. Don't let this be the last time, the second Reconstruction, that all these beautiful things are happening. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Smith. I'll have a little conversation with Skip later about trying to follow the amazing Cornel West and David Evans, but I will do my best. It is no doubt a sign of her power that Ursula Burns tends to be dismissive of her perpetual residence on the lists of Fortune's and Forbes' most powerful women. In 2009, she was named CEO of Xerox, becoming the first Black woman to lead a Fortune 500 company. We all know Xerox, right? The document company, synonymous with copies. She took one of the most solid, reliable, and familiar companies in American corporate landscape, and she successfully pushed a giant forward. Today, because of her leadership, Xerox is the world's most diversified business services company, serving enterprises and governments of all sizes. Ursula Burns grew up in the Baroque houses on New York's Lower East Side, with a mother who put together any small earnings she had to send her daughter, who had shown an early gift for math, to a private Catholic school. Through hard work, grit, and a refusal to be daunted by being only one of a handful of women pursuing math and science, she earned a place at Brooklyn Polytechnic Institute. Graduating as an engineer, profession after my own heart, Burns had few models to follow and many stereotypes to break. As she said to the 2009 graduating class at the Rochester Institute of Technology, and I quote, "I can assure you that at my commencement, no one was pointing at me and predicting that I would become a CEO of anything." Predicted or not, over the course of 30 years, she rose from an internship at Xerox to its highest position. She drew upon her mother's wisdom as she forged her path, never holding back on expressing opinions and never forgetting the responsibilities that came with each promotion. Responsibilities that included speaking out and strongly against the comments of a Xerox executive who humored a remark about bringing in all these women and minorities, lowering the performance of the company. Her presence at Xerox, after all, was proof that there can be no excellence without opportunity, and opportunity should never be confined to a single group determined by race or gender. Unfortunately, the numbers we see today in corporate America are not what any of us would like. In fact, far from it. A report released just last week by McKinsey & Company and leanin.org revealed that women of color make up just 3% of executives in the leadership of 132 North American companies, a number wholly disproportionate when women of color make up 20% of the US population. Beyond her Xerox headquarters, Ursula Burns has dedicated herself to offering a hand to women and girls, especially women and girls of color, to engage with STEM education and to enter the STEM professions. In 2009, President Obama appointed Burns the head of the White House National Program on Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. This grew into Change the Equation initiative, funded by the Gates Foundation, which works at the intersection of business and education to ensure that every young person in the US is STEM literate. Ursula Burns has taken to heart and repeatedly demonstrated a piece of wisdom she received from her mother, who said, "Leave behind more than you take away." The Hutchins Center recognizes Ursula Burns for her remarkable professional achievements, but even more so for her commitment to effecting change and building new platforms on which women and girls of all backgrounds can reach their highest potential. It is my honor to present Ursula Burns with the W.E.B. Du Bois Medal. Thank you.
Congratulations. Proud of you.
Look down there.
I was worried too when I first have a lot of kindred spiritualness with Dean Smith because we're both engineers, and generally engineers are not very good speakers. And if you are an engineer who follows Cornel West, and my man David, who I say I love his face, you know we're in trouble, but not bad. Dean Smith, thank you. Thank you for the kind words and for the very special honor. You know, I'm proud and humbled. I was saying earlier to some of my compatriots, my fellow honorees, how my family has generally dumped me for any award now. So they say, you go get it yourself. I'm just tired of following you around and getting awards. So I stopped going. And I told them that the other day that I was coming here. They said, yeah, Harvard, not bad. You know, it's not a bad place. And then I said I was getting the W.E.B. Du Bois Award. They said, oh, maybe I should go. I kind of know who this guy is, and I know he did something really important. So while I say I'm honored, I really am honored. This is a powerful statement. I'm really proud. I'm really proud to be associated with Harvard, with engineering, but most importantly with W.E.B. Du Bois. My mother shared a belief with me and with my family that education was not only the way up, it was the way forward. So when we were growing up, I grew up in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and we were always thinking about up. But she realized that up was not enough, that you had to also move things forward. And so she invested a ton of time and energy and every cent that she had to make sure that my brother, my sister, and I had a foundation and understanding of what up meant and what forward meant. And up did not mean more money. Up did not mean prettier clothes. Up meant a foundation where you can bring other people up as well. And forward was seeing a world that was different, generally better, than the world that we were living in. So up and forward was what W.E.B. Du Bois thought of. Up and forward is what Harvard stands for. Up and forward is what I am trying to preserve and move forward in the world. So this award is not because Ursula Burns did a great number of things. It's because my mother did a great number of things. The schools that I went to did a great number of things. My friends and my associates whose shoulders I stand on did a great number of things. And so up and forward for me is going to be able to have people who stand here after me and say, I had this person, her name was Ursula Burns, and she helped me up and forward. So I thank all of you for honoring me today. I want to make sure that you understand that this is not about me. It's about all of the people who helped me move up and forward. So thank you so much.
Since everybody has been confessing their speaking anxiety, I ought to confess mine too. It's a great honor to be here, and I would like to congratulate the W.E.B. Du Bois Center as well as the Hutchins Center for a great achievement over a sustained period of time, an achievement as much of education as of empathy. Thank you very much. These words from Du Bois, I believe, come at a very appropriate time in this country and in this world, and I hope you see their relevance. With characteristic prescience, W.E.B. Du Bois marked an important distinction between the scholarly reaches of race science and the quotidian claims of race as an everyday practice of prejudice lived out on the street, in the employment office, in the cinema hall, on the bus and train. Race science has its grand narratives, its attempt at scholarly respectability, its spurious ethnographic and political authority. Everyday racism follows a different path and has a different purpose. Its archive consists of the profane knowledge spread by rumor and innuendo, monstrous stereotypes circulated by the media and by political windbags, and die-hard habits of humiliation, insult, and injury, as we see them today, with people more keen to maintain their hairstyles than to talk sense. Quotidian racism is a way of talking, a way of walking, and a way of looking. Race science seeks to justify racism with a respectable rationale, and it fails to do so. Quotidian racism lays claims to social anxiety, which attaches a racial slur to any passing form of despair or discontent, fueling resentment with prejudice and persecution. Du Bois's great insight is that racism does not merely have a long history, it also works through a short, sudden, and contingent and fearsome temporality of exclusion. Racial assault operates through a terrifying kind of time, a social time that is anxious, inconstant, and uncertain. And it is this ongoing anxiety of uncertainty that is the most oppressive kind of racism, that is the most oppressive kind of persecution in the everyday life of racist societies. And Du Bois, in this passage, narrates this moment of quotidian racism with an electric pulse in his elegiac essay of Beauty and Death, from which I speak. My friend, who is pale and positive, said to me yesterday as the tired sun was nodding, "You are too sensitive." I admit, I am sensitive. I'm artificial. I cringe, or am bumptious or immobile. I'm intellectually dishonest, art blind, and I lack humor. "Why don't you stop all this?" she retorts triumphantly. "Because you will not let us." I arise at 7. The milkman has neglected me. He pays little attention to colored districts. My white neighbor glares elaborately. I walk softly, lest I disturb him. The children jeer as I pass to work. The women in the streets' cars withdraw their skirts or prepare to stand. The policeman is truculent. The elevator man hates to serve Negroes. My job is insecure because the white union wants it and does not want me. I try to lunch, but no place near me will serve me. I hurry home through crowded streets. The crowds mutter or get angry. I go to a mass meeting, they stare. I go to church. We don't admit niggers. Or perhaps I leave the beaten track. I seek new work. Our employees would not work with you comfortably. Your customers would object. I ask to help in social uplift. Why, yeah, we will write to you. I enter the free field of science. Every laboratory door is closed and no endowments are available. I seek the universal mistress, art. The studio door is closed. I write literature. We cannot publish stories of colored folks of that type. It's the only type I know. This is my life. It makes me idiotic. It gives me artificial problems. I hesitate, I rush, I waver. In fine, I am sensitive. My pale friend looks at me with disbelief and curling tongue. Do you mean to sit there and tell me that this is what happens to you each day? Certainly not, I answer. Then you only fear that it will happen. Yes, I fear. Well, haven't you the courage to rise above all this, to rise above a craven fear? Quite. Quite craven is my fear, I admit. But the terrible thing is, these things happen every day. But you just said, they do happen. Not all each day, surely not. But now and then, now seldom, now sudden, now after a week, now in a chain of awful minutes, not everywhere but anywhere. In Boston, in Atlanta, that's the hell of it. Imagine spending your life looking for insults or for hiding places from them, shrinking instinctively and despite desperate bold strings of courage from blows that are not always, but ever. Not each day, but each week, each month, each year. Just perhaps as you have checked back the craven fear and cried, I am and I will be the master of my life. No more tickets downstairs. Here's one to the smoking gallery. You hesitate. You beat back your suspicions. After all, a cigarette with Charlie Chaplin. Then a white man pushes by. 3 in the orchestra. Yes, sir. And in he goes. Suddenly, that silly orchestra seat and the cavorting of a comedian with funny feet becomes a matter of life, death, and immortality. You grasp the pillars of the universe and strain as you sway back to the befrilled ticket girl. You grip your soul for riot and murder, you choke and sputter, and she, seeing that you're making a fuss, obeys her orders and throws the tickets at you in contempt. And so too, there are depths of human degradation which it is not fair for us to probe with all their horrible prevalence. We cannot call them natural. But may we not compare the least of the world's beauty with the least of its ugliness? Not murder, starvation, and rapine, with love and friendship and creation, but the glory of sea and sky and city, with the little hatefulnesses and thoughtlessnesses of race prejudice, that out of such juxtaposition, we may perhaps deduce some rule of beauty and life, or death. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is William Julius Wilson, and it really is a great honor to participate in this program. Now, in early 2006, 2 associates in my program on joblessness and urban poverty at the Harvard Kennedy School urged me to watch the HBO series entitled The Wire, created by David Simon. And after listening to their constant urgings for more than a year, I bought the DVD for season 1 and began reading the first episode on a long flight to Bangkok, Thailand in December 2007. Shortly after the plane departed from Boston, I was hooked and ended up getting only 3 hours sleep on an 18-hour flight because I watched all 12 episodes of season 1. The Wire, which aired from June 2nd, 2002 to March 9, 2008, includes 5 seasons and 60 episodes. And over the years, believe it or not, I have watched each of these episodes at least 5 times. And I was so impressed with the series that I worked with a graduate student in developing an undergraduate course at Harvard entitled Urban Inequality in HBO's The Wire, which examined a series of topics related to urban inequality and poverty, and was taught 4 times between 2008 and 2011. We use this critically acclaimed television series as a thread to integrate topics that form the basis of a thorough understanding of urban inequality, including crime, incarceration, work and labor markets, the unregulated economy, urban politics, and education. The course focused on academic research that was examined in conjunction with the series. With the freedom of artistic expression, The Wire could be more creative than the academic works in weaving together the forces that shape the lives of the urban poor. And it presents these complex processes without sacrificing nuance or resorting to oversimplification. Since teaching a course or the class on The Wire, I've had the distinct pleasure and honor of getting to know David personally. And he and some of the cast members participated in several events I helped organize at Harvard, including appearing in my classes on The Wire to the delight of the students. David's illuminating accounts of the factors affecting low-income families living in inner-city neighborhoods were fine-tuned on the streets of Baltimore, where he worked as a police reporter for the Baltimore Sun for 8 years. These experiences helped craft a compelling account of a homicide investigation in Baltimore that was published in 1991 and was later adapted into the critically acclaimed NBC TV series Homicide: Life on the Street, which ran from 1993 to 1999. Subsequently, David and his collaborator, Edward Burns, himself a veteran police officer and public school teacher, parlayed their street smarts and sociological perceptiveness into a heart-rending account of a family's struggles with poverty in a book entitled The Corner: A Year in the Life of an Inner-City Neighborhood, which was later adapted into an HBO award-winning miniseries. In the TV series entitled Treme, David focused on another severely distressed area, this time a culturally rich but economically disadvantaged Black community in post-Katrina New Orleans. And more recently, David collaborated on a compelling account of the tensions surrounding the development of public housing in a white middle-class neighborhood in Yonkers, New York, which aired in 2015 on HBO. Over the course of his career, David Simon has offered us an unflinching portrait of race, class, and poverty in the United States. Thus, for leading us to a nuanced and compelling account of life in American inner cities, the Hutchins Center awards the W.E.B. Du Bois Medal to David Simon.
If Dr. Du Bois were to know that one of these is hanging around the neck of a television hack, he would be spinning. He would be spinning. As you just heard a moment earlier, that guy could really write and think. And when I was told I was going to receive this honor from Dr. Gates, I pulled some Du Bois down off the shelf. I didn't go for souls of the stuff that I'd read or that I thought I could remember some of. My hands found their way, strangely, to an early book that he wrote where he was trying to reconcile and recover the moralism, the moral standing of John Brown. I don't know if anyone's ever read his biography of John Brown. I'd never read it before. It was one of those books that sat on my shelf and didn't quite command me to read it until this moment. And I was struck by one thing, which is, what happened to me was accident in terms of why I ended up writing anything about what I did or even experiencing any of it as an observer, which is to say, I got hired to be a police reporter at a mainstream newspaper in a Rust Belt city at the exact moment that the drug war was going to ratchet up and mass incarceration was going to ratchet up. And of course, I approached it thinking all the things that some suburban kid would think about a war against drugs and how drugs are bad and how the culture is dangerous and that everyone is shooting guns, and we have to do this. We have to chase this in the streets. We have to make the penalties commensurate with this great crime. And I don't claim any prescience or insight or any clarity on any of it. Probably the only thing that went right is I didn't get promoted. And I just stayed there covering it day after day and watching arrest after arrest, dope on the table. I watched the numbers in prisons go up and up and up and up. And my great colleague on the wire, Ed Burns, from the police perspective and later as a public school teacher, he watched the same thing. And by our own inertia and the fact that we were there for a lot of years, it became clear to us that something very much had happened to us, which was that, seeing something for one way for a long period of years and being told a certain thing for a long period of years, it can make it seem right. It can lend status quo a sense of permanence and necessity that it doesn't really have. And we now find ourselves in this particular year, post-Ferguson and in the years to come, I hope, at a point where a lot of things are necessarily being questioned and challenged, and presumptions, and even the terminology by which we look at how our society has to change is being challenged. And I was brought back to that book by Du Bois, how he took a character who was at that moment in time scarcely redeemed from the notoriety of Kansas, of bloody Kansas, or of Harper's Ferry, and who was looked upon in his age as a reckless, crazed terrorist, somebody utterly committed to violence. And he restored in some basic way in that volume the notion that, wait a sec, step back from the entire construct of race and look at this man. Well, you know, in this moment, in this year, a lot of things that we, you know, as a police reporter, you knew that you were too reliant on authority to tell you what happened in the dark of an alley. You knew that it was one person's word against another. You knew that the game was in a certain sense rigged for authority. But what could you do with that other than to write down the quotes and hear what the official versions were? But we are all now in this moment experiencing a little bit of a revolution through this thing. And it is overdue, and it is painful, yet it is exhilarating, but most of all, it is necessary. I am convinced this is going to end well. It's going to end well. It's going to be a struggle. There's going to be a lot of heartbreak involved, but I don't think there's any going back. And what's happened in the last year, as the old police reporter in me is thinking, there's a lot here. There's a lot of good work that can be done on this, our country. And so it's a strange thing that I took that book because he took on a real challenge there. And he brought it through about halfway. And so I'm very honored to have this award with his name on it as a real writer. And I'm going to take it back to all my friends in the television industry, and I'm going to explain who Du Bois is to them. And I'm going to show it off, and I'm going to try to convince them that I'm a real writer too. Thank you very much.
I want to add my congratulations to the medalists. We're so honored to have you here today. And I also want to say a special personal word as well as institutional word of thanks to Glenn and Debbie Hutchins for their magnificent support of what makes today happen and what makes so much more happen. Although she was unable to be with us today, Jessie Norman is no stranger to Harvard. In 1988, she was awarded an honorary doctorate in music. In 1997, she received the Radcliffe Medal. The following year, she sang Amazing Grace at the historic convocation in Harvard Yard, where Nelson Mandela received an honorary doctorate of law. And she was present again in 2000 to celebrate the 30th anniversary of what was then called the Department of Afro-American Studies. But it's not enough to say she was present at these events. In many ways, she defined them, possessed of those wondrous gifts of music and grace. She lifts the human spirit and brings joy throughout the world, to borrow the words of the 1988 honorary doctorate citation. Following the path struck by Marian Anderson and Leontine Price, Jessie Norman also expands the boundaries of what Black music is and what it means for a Black woman to perform music traditionally a part of the European tradition. There is no soprano who can match her outstanding range, or what the Los Angeles Times referred to as her huge, dark, rich, glorious voice that can roar like thunder one moment and whisper like a zephyr the next. She has sung Berlioz, Stravinsky, Bartók, Schoenberg, Wagner, and Richard Strauss, to name just a few, all around the world. And she's also performed a song cycle co-written by Toni Morrison. She has received dozens of awards and honors for her opera recordings, and she's also recorded a jazz CD. Her status as a diva is global, and she's also deeply connected to the institutions of her adopted city, New York. serving on the boards of the New York Public Library, the New York Botanical Garden, City's Meals on Wheels, the Dance Theater of Harlem. And perhaps, and this may surprise you, most surprisingly, she is a lifelong honorary Girl Scout. But she works for that status and has been known to sell 2,000 boxes of Girl Scout cookies in a single year. As is clear in her establishment of an extracurricular, tuition-free music program in her home city of Augusta, Georgia, her excellence is a direct result of her commitment, her passion, and her relentless drive, which may explain the cookie sales. Jessie Norman curated the Music for Honor, Carnegie Hall's 3-week festival of African American culture in 2009. The choices she made focused on the lineage of African American music, on the rich genealogy of Black voices and sounds. Known for her gorgeous renditions of the most traditional European music, she also sings spirituals from the deepest place in her soul. Jessie Norman shared her philosophy of music and beauty when she received the Radcliffe Medal. She said, "Your sophisticated, educated selves may look with a questioning eye on the joy in your heart from singing that Bach cantata in the church choir or penning the perfect haiku at the birth of your child. But this, my friends, is your soul's music. Listen to it and enjoy it. Indulge in it, nurture it, dance with it, caress it, love it. For the gifts she has given our spirits from her spirit, the Hutchins Center proudly presents Jessie Norman with the W.E.B. Du Bois Medal.
I love the discipline that is involved in bringing this breath out of my lungs, past my vocal cords, in a controlled fashion that is meant to give me, most of the time, a certain sound.
Well, I'm so sorry we couldn't hear Jessie Norman because her magnificent voice would be the perfect thing to introduce these two readings from W.E.B. Du Bois they're very short passages that I've taken from the Souls of Black Folk about music. And over the course of my career as a scholar of African American music, I've gone back to this chapter over and over again of the Sorrow Songs. And in these two short passages, I just marvel that Du Bois is able to communicate the power of music, the joy of music, the necessity of music in the struggle for freedom. And so, by fateful chance, the Negro folk song, the rhythmic cry of the slave, stands today not simply as the sole American music, but as the most beautiful expression of human experience born this side of the seas. It has been neglected. It has been and is half despised. And above all, it has been persistently mistaken and misunderstood. But notwithstanding, it still remains as the singular spiritual heritage of the nation and the greatest gift of the Negro people. If somewhere in this whirl and chaos of things there dwells eternal good, pitiful yet masterful, then anon, in his good time, America shall rend the veil and the prisoned shall go free. Free, free as the sunshine trickling down the morning into these high windows of mine. Free as yonder fresh young voices welling up to me from the caverns of brick and mortar below. Swelling with song, instinct with life, tremulous treble, and darkening bass. Thank you.
Though we still need to say it, it should go without saying that music is one of the most powerful forces we have for exploring and understanding culture, race, and identity. Hip-hop is no different. In fact, it is the prime example of that. Over the past 40 years, since its beginning, hip-hop has emerged as the language of youth all over the world who are drawn to its unique capacity to build respect and represent. Hip-hop is fluid. It's a fluid, adaptable language. Its best practitioners see it not only as a path to possible fame and hopefully fortune, but as a classroom, a platform from which to reach out and teach young people how to make their way in a world that doesn't always seem to have a place or space for them. There is no one who has used that platform to greater effect than Lana, the artist we know as MC Lyte. The first female hip-hop artist to be nominated for a Grammy for Best Single, to earn a gold single, to be recognized with VH1 Hip-Hop Honors, to perform at the White House, and yes, to make it to Carnegie Hall twice. Yes. MC Lyte is a hip-hop pioneer who's used her voice and her rhymes to show the world what a powerful woman in charge can do, flowing with sounds, rhymes, insight, language, and ideas that go far beyond the mic, the turntable, and the stage, and to the core of our everyday world. MC Lyte is the premier MC, DJ, and performer who has worked with all of the major players in hip-hop, and she has also appeared in numerous films and television television programs. In addition, she is a sought-after voiceover artist and entrepreneur and is a cultural thought leader, sharing her ideas at corporate, educational, arts, and community institutions and organizations. She's delivered keynote addresses at Duke University, Ohio State, University of Wisconsin-Madison, University of California, Santa Barbara, University of Tennessee, Knoxville, to name just a few. She speaks about female empowerment, how hip-hop's ethic of education, engagement, and respect can move all people, women and girls, men and boys, to a place of self-knowledge and the empowerment to act and advocate. She has done this work most forcefully through her Hip Hop Sisters Foundation, the nonprofit she founded to promote positive images of women of color, harnessing the energy and power of leaders in hip hop, the entertainment industry, and corporate world to support women and girls in the area of cultural expression, financial literacy, health and wellness, mentorship, and of course, education. I had the good fortune to meet MC Lyte last year at the White House Council on Women and Girls Conference. We were on the panel, Hip Hop, Women's Vulnerability and Voices. Amidst this unique gathering of grassroots leaders, politicians, and academics, I marveled as she not only commanded the room, but also enlightened it. She represented and argued for a hip-hop that continues to build and that takes its role and responsibilities critically as it celebrates and argues that we must stand up for women and girls. Today, it should be no surprise that MC Lyte is one of the featured new artists in the 2017 Hip Hop Archive and Research Institute signature project, Classic Crates. The Classic Crates project explores and analyzes hip-hop albums that have had the greatest impact on music and culture. Her 1988 album, Light as a Rock, will be inducted into Harvard's Loeb Library collection this spring. There was never any question in my mind that MC Lyte would have pride of place in that project. She is a pioneer who has never rested. She is a woman whose power has never flagged, but has grown stronger over the course of her career. She is currently in her 4th decade as an established hip-hop recording artist and now actor. What can I say, you know? I tried to read it as fast as I could. Actor, is now an actor, businesswoman, philanthropist, and game changer. She released the album Legend in 2015, and this year is releasing new media through Spotlight. Very few of her contemporaries, male or female, who began their hip-hop recording careers in the mid to early 1980s have continued to release new music, and even fewer, arguably none, have done so with MC Lyte's level of success. Moreover, though many have tried, few have been able to establish educational foundations that build in their communities and also speak to the concerns of youth in the U.S. and around the world. Yes, MC Lyte put the hard work in, and she kept working and growing. She never stopped. She never left us. She encourages anyone who will listen through education, entrepreneurship, and philanthropy while giving us music to move to, words to recite, and examples that reflect our realities. Yes, Lana Moore, you are the light still shining. For her unmatched contributions to hip-hop and for her commitment to advancing the lives of women and girls through music, the Hutchins Center recognizes Lana Moore, the artist we know as MC Lyte, with the W.B. Du Bois Medal. She's light as a rock. Okay.
Well done.
There you go, girl. Congratulations. Congratulations. Should I? All righty. Yes. Do I stand? Yeah, we can picture. Sure.
My goodness. I've learned throughout the course of the last 5 years of my career to stop wondering what I'm doing somewhere. I am here because God has put me here. Are we okay back here? Okay, awesome. Well, first off, good afternoon to everyone. Yes, it is a pleasure to be here with you all. Who would have thought? You know, just picked up the microphone at 16 years old and said I wanted to have a message, an anti-drug message that taught the generation that I was a part of to stay away from drugs. And now I've been everywhere doing everything, and I am very taken aback that I'm even here with you all today. Although I know it is a purpose, and it's funny with that long introduction. Sometimes when I hear the things that have been accomplished, I know that it's just God moving me through to get to the finish line for whatever it is my purpose is for Him. So throughout my career with music and touring and performing, the one thing that has made it all worthwhile is the satisfaction of being able to give back and to also pay it forward. Before I move forward, though, I just have to say how elated I am to be in the company of all of these honorees. Please give them a round of applause. Once again, I look at this dais and I say, what am I doing here? But I guess I have done something. So there are a few precepts by which I live my life. And much like you, Miss Ursula, my mom took a very strong stand with me as a child, and enunciating was very important, and the thesaurus was very important. Fine was no longer good enough when asked how I was doing, so I had to go find some elaborate way of saying I was fine. So I thank my mother. She taught me how to dream big. She also taught me to be impeccable with my word. Throughout the years, I have become attached to the mantra. I don't know if you've seen The Geisha Girl, but in the beginning, they have a voiceover that says, I am like water. I move through, I move over, I move under, I permeate, I am unstoppable. And because of this, I have taken on the task of seeing whatever it is that I begin to see it through and be the change that I want to see. So I am humbled to receive this award, and much like Mr. W.E.B. Du Bois, I am a practicing activist looking to expand the minds of our youth and create opportunities where there seem to be none. It's because of a forerunner like Mr. Du Bois, we all have the chance to be and create the change that we want to see. With the foundation that was spoken of, Hip Hop Sisters, which we started about 4.5 years ago, with our signature initiative now being #EducateOurMen, we have given away nearly $750,000 worth of scholarships to young people continuing their education, specifically men of color. Yes. Yes. Thank you to the Hutchins Center. Thank you to Harvard for choosing me and continuing to shine a light on the work that Mr. Du Bois did with countless others who seek freedom and justice for all. I thank you very much for allowing me to participate.
Good evening, everybody. It's a remarkable honor for a social scientist, a survey researcher, a kind of Philistine number cruncher to play the part I'm about to play, which is to introduce Pam Grier. There are few honorees who we might recognize that I suspect would do more to delight Dr. Du Bois himself than Pam Grier. I have multiple reasons for making this claim. Pam Grier's work as an actress and film star, as an African-American woman in the public eye, and as an engaged citizen of all the world around her, have done important, indeed historic and transformative good toward what Dr. Du Bois once termed as, quote, to compel recognition. To compel recognition. I want to work through this claim in three different ways. It is worth recalling that in his provocative 1920 essay, The Damnation of Women, Du Bois wrote of the great challenges and burdens faced by African American women, as well as the enormous resources, capabilities, and irreducible humanity of black women, a humanity too often challenged over the great arc of the American experience. That exact mix of circumstances and qualities comes through vividly in so many of Pam Grier's performances, including those once derided as exemplars of the blaxploitation genre. Consider the film Coffee, in which Grier came to national attention in 1973. She played bit roles prior to that in such movies as Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. Did you know that? Yeah. But it was Coffee and the subsequent line of work that resulted in her being crowned as what English scholar Yvonne D. Sims calls the Queen of Blaxploitation. No one embodies the genre the way that Pam Grier did. In Coffee and Foxy Brown in particular, she was the consummate badass feminist hero, subverting the expectations. Subverting the expectations and creating new ones with her fearlessness, her intelligence, and her control. Her characters did not suffer fools or villains gladly, but fools, and especially those who might harm her loved ones, suffered mightily at her hands. Her look and style came to define 1970s feminism in many ways. She was the first African-American woman to appear on the cover of Ms. Magazine in 1975. That cover story, in fact, was written by our own Jamaica Kincaid, who was then a freelance journalist and writer. As Jamaica said at the time, quote, Coffee, Foxy Brown, and Sheba Baby have one outstanding redeeming value. They are the only films to come out of Hollywood in a long time to show us a woman who is independent, is resourceful, self-confident, strong, and courageous. Above all, they are the only films to show us a woman who triumphs, end quote. And here it is worth emphasizing that Pam Grier is the original, the first major motion picture action female hero. It is only in the wake of Coffee and Foxy Brown that you get TV programs like Get Christy Love, or later Charlie's Angels, or even a Sigourney Weaver in the Alien film series. She is the female action hero. Thus, her example opened the door for all women, not just black women. In Pam Grier's performances, you hear then the echoes of Du Bois's words when he wrote, quote, for this, their promise, and for their hard past, I honor the women of my race, their beauty, their dark and mysterious beauty of midnight eyes, crumpled hair, and soft, full-featured faces, is perhaps more to me than you because I was born to its warm and subtle spell. But their worth is yours as well as mine. No other women on earth could have emerged from the hell of force and temptation which once engulfed and still surrounds black women in America with half the modesty and womanliness that they retain. As Pam Grier herself explained in an Essence magazine interview in 1979, quote, I make no apologies for the women I created. Actually, I recreated. When I grew up, I knew a certain kind of black woman who was the sole support of her family and who would, if you disrespected her, beat you into the cement. She was the glue that held her family together, got them through. I admired her greatly. I still do, and she still exists. I brought that lady to the screen, played her to the bone. Which brings me to my second point. Pam Grier is a proud survivor of the wars of respectability politics that have so long characterized the African American experience. Oh yes, the very term blaxploitation was coined as an expletive by Julius Griffin of the Hollywood chapter of the NAACP as a deeply critical fusion of black and exploitation. These films came under sharp attack from leading lights of the day, such as Jessie Jackson, as well as some prominent African-American intellectual voices, even here at Harvard, who derided the films as, quote, in no way beneficial to the black family. I often wonder what those struggles must have been like for someone like Pam Grier. Imagine the contrast. On the cover of Jet magazine in August of 1973, sporting full afro, navel exposed with a midriff blouse, gold hoop earrings, only to be denounced as a threat to black progress on the pages of Psychology Today in February. as among those pervading, quote, cheap thrills that degrade blacks. Now, envision trying to get roles, trying to get white Hollywood to broaden its view of black capacity, of the tastes of black audiences, of American taste more generally, et cetera, et cetera. All of which Pam Grier clearly contended with and did so in the most serious and valiant fashion. But as the Jet magazine article recognized in a way, Pam was already in ascendance even then. She was one of only three truly bankable leading actresses in the 1970s. Liza Minnelli, Barbra Streisand, Pam Grier. That's it. So, there's no doubt then why the title of Jamaica Kincaid's Ms. Magazine article was Pam Grier, the mocha mogul of Hollywood. But the full arc of time has taught us better in terms of how we view these films. Not only did Pam Grier boldly step out of the shadow of the asexual, gone with the wind mammy stereotype and the tragic imitation of life mulatto trope, but she emerged as a fully independent and empowered woman, sexually and otherwise, given the arms her characters usually packed and deployed with merciless efficiency in ways that opened doors for all women. How and why does she survive these culture wars? This brings me to my third and final point, which also has important echoes in Du Bois's work, especially an essay he wrote in 1926 on the occasion of Carter G. Woodson's receipt of the Spingarn Medal from the NAACP, entitled On the Criteria of Negro Art. Du Bois admonishes black artists of all stripes to pursue their own visions of goodness, truth, and beauty through all means available to them. He does not suggest that poets, writers, painters, or performers subdue their art to a dogmatic message, but rather that they strive to let the greatness of their talents and contributions be the proof of the fullness of black creativity and humanity. As he declared, quote, we must come to the place where the work of art, when it appears, is reviewed and acclaimed by our own free and unfettered judgment. And we are going to have a real and valuable and eternal judgment only as we make ourselves free of mind, proud of body, and just of soul to all men, end quote. And this is precisely what Pam Grier did and accomplished. As Jamaica Kincaid grasped in 1975, quote, Pam Grier has an extremely valuable asset, star quality. She can so effortlessly dominate a scene that everything and everyone else in it becomes incidental. You are struck by how extraordinarily beautiful Pam Grier is, and through her films, this is a slam on American independent films, not Pam, to be shabbily put together, she comes across in them with intelligence and charm, end quote. Thankfully, Quentin Tarantino's 1997 Jackie Brown brought that star quality back into glorious public view. Her performance sizzled, did it not? With all the intelligence, autonomy, grit, worldliness, sophistication, and sexuality she'd been known for in the earlier wave of films. And the circle would be complete. As Du Bois wrote near the end of his essay on art, quote, I do not doubt that the ultimate art coming from black folks is going to be just as beautiful largely in the same ways as the art that comes from white folk or yellow or red. But the point today is that until the art of black folk compels recognition, they will not be rated as human. And when through art they compel recognition, then let the world discover, if it will, their art is as new as it is old, and as old as it is new. So quite fittingly, this fall, the Harvard Film Archive has created a retrospective around this artist, Pam Grier, who has without a doubt compelled our recognition. This retrospective is entitled Pam Grier, Superstar. And this weekend will feature my dear friend Skip Gates in conversation with her. The Boston Globe's recent profile of her appeared under the headline, "Let Us Now Praise Pam Grier." And I think that title captures the admiration and adulation we all feel for this black actress who broke new ground, for this icon of black female power and intelligence, for this superstar and artist of the first order of eminence who always stuck by her guns and compelled recognition. In honor of her path-breaking career as actor and advocate, the Hutchins Center gives the W.E.B. Du Bois Medal to Pam Grier. I'm trying. You're so amazing.
I think Bobo's in love.
He's gonna grab. How to get
He's gonna be okay with all that hair?
Yeah, I'm good. It's my fro has grown out. There's a little- okay, come on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, thank you. Oh. Thank you so very, very much for this profound honor. You have no idea how important this moment is to me and my grandmama, great-grandmama Lucy Davis, who had a sugar beet farm in Wyoming and a hotel for the African Americans and Asians that worked on the railroad called the Davis Hotel. Back in the early 1920, 1930s, she was that woman that slapped you into the concrete. But I come from a family of my grandfather was the first feminist that taught all the girls in our family to hunt, fish, and shoot, and to be self-sufficient. And I grew up with that and brought it to screen. So as a youngster in my youth, during the 50s and 60s, 70s, during Revolution, and experiencing measured freedoms, I read W.E.B. Du Bois, and he set my soul on fire, okay? He prepared me for my womanity, humanity. He taught me, he encouraged me to liberate myself. And through it, he said, don't see yourself through others, through the eyes of others. Be yourself. And that's what I did. That's why I'm here. Thank you. Thank you very, very much for this honor to my esteemed colleagues. This is wonderful. Thank you. And I wish my family could be here. They can't. And I share this with all the people. Abana Jacobs from Subaru USA, who helps me with my charities. Jamaica Kincaid, who sat with me. And I was so impressed with her and said, I want to grow up to be her. Jamaica.
Good evening. What a pleasure to go from the beauty of words in song to the beauty of words in text. I am reading an excerpt by Du Bois from an essay referenced by Professor Bobo, The Criteria of Negro Act. This is published in The Crisis in October 1926. and it is about beauty. Who shall describe beauty? What is it? I remember tonight 4 beautiful things. The cathedral at Cologne, a forest in stone, set in light and changing shadow, echoing with sunlight and solemn song. A village of the vase in West Africa, a little thing of mauve and purple, quiet, lying content and shining in the sun. A black and velvet room, where on a throne rests, in old and yellowing marble, the broken curves of the Venus de Milo. A single phrase of music in the southern south, utter melody, haunting and appealing, suddenly arising out of night and eternity beneath the moon. Such is beauty. Its variety is infinite. Its possibility is endless. In normal life, all may have it and have it yet again. The world is full of it, and yet today, the mass of human beings are choked away from it and their lives distorted and made ugly. This is not only wrong, it is silly. Who shall right this well-nigh universal failing? Who shall let this world be beautiful? Who shall restore to men the glory of sunsets and the peace of quiet sleep? We black folk may help, for we have within us, as a race, new stirrings, stirrings of the beginning of a new application of joy, of a new desire to create, of a new will to be. As though in this morning of group life, we had awakened from some sleep that at once dimly mourns the past and dreams a splendid future. Thank you.
It is my pleasure to introduce Pat Riley, who will present our final honorees. In his chosen field, Pat has accomplished everything imaginable. He's a 9-time NBA champion and is the first American sports figure to win a championship as a player, a coach, and an executive. What he would call Pat, I think you'd call that a three-peat, which, if you don't know, is a term he trademarked. Pat's list of accolades is endless. He coached 9 NBA All-Star games, was named NBA Coach of the Year 3 times, as well as NBA Executive of the Year and one of the 10 greatest coaches in NBA history. Not surprisingly, he was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2008. His NBA resume only includes one fundamental flaw. Sadly, he was never a Celtic. Tonight, Pat, all is forgiven. For the academics in attendance today, you might be interested to know that Pat has published 2 books, both of which appeared on the New York Times bestseller list. And unlike our academic friends, he's also been featured as a character in a best-selling video game. Not even Skip could top that. Pat entered the broader public consciousness when he presided over Showtime in LA, together with superstar players like Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Along the way, he became a celebrity in his own right, a fashion icon for his Armani suits and slicked back hair. But Pat's impact on basketball began well before the 1980s. In 1961, in a precursor of events to come, Pat's high school team from Schenectady, New York, played a team from New York City, which featured a young player named Lou Alcindor. Pat went on to play in 1963, went in 1963 to play for the famed Adolph Rupp at the University of Kentucky, while Alcindor later renamed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, went to play for the legendary John Wooden at UCLA, only to be reunited 20 years afterwards on the Lakers. A Hollywood studio could not have written a better script. Looking back on it now, the early 60s was a formative time for basketball, especially for African Americans in the collegiate game. But it was also not without its precursors. In earlier decades, the New York Wrens, named in an homage to the Harlem Renaissance, had played in Harlem and barnstormed the country in the 20s and 30s. The Harlem Globetrotters, who ironically were from Chicago, appeared in their wake in the 40s, and individual African-American stars, most notably Bill Russell, Elgin Baylor, and Oscar Robertson, had flourished on largely all-white teams in college in the 50s. As the 60s unfolded, though, college basketball began to change. In 1962, Mississippi State had spurned an invitation, refused an invitation to the NCAA tournament because the school administration forbade competition with integrated teams. But in 1963, that same Mississippi State coach snuck his team out of state to play and to lose to Loyola of Chicago in the Mid-East semifinal. That year, Loyola had started 4 black players in the NCAA championship game, breaking the gentleman's agreement. I'm never sure why they use the term gentleman in connection with this, but breaking the gentleman's agreement not to play more than 3 black players at any one time, and won. The losing team, Cincinnati, themselves started 3 black players, making 7 of the starters in the 1963 championship black. The winds of change were blowing. The 1965-66 basketball season unfolded during a tumultuous time. Congress passed the Voting Rights Act. Muhammad Ali, last year's honoree, refused induction into the armed forces. James Meredith, whom Skip and I met not long ago, was shot in Mississippi. America's cities witnessed anti-war protests and what were then called race riots. And George Wallace, the governor of Alabama, was gearing up to run for president. Brown versus Board of Education was 12 years old, but several major college conferences, including the ACC, the SEC, and the Southwestern Conference, did not have a single varsity player who was black. That year, Pat Riley was a junior at Kentucky and was named both SEC Player of the Year and All-American. In March, he traveled to College Park, Maryland, to lead his team into what we now call the Final Four, and left having witnessed history in the making. But before Texas Western met Kentucky in the NCAA Finals in 1966, they first had to play perennial powerhouse Kansas, which featured a superstar by the name of JoJo White. Hold on, hang on. The Miners won a thrilling double overtime game. In the waning seconds of the first overtime, JoJo White hit a very long jump shot that appeared to win the game, but was nullified when the referee ruled that he'd stepped out of bounds, which JoJo took in stride and never disputed, like the true gentleman that he is. Texas Western went on to the Final Four, and JoJo went on to be an All-American, an Olympian, a 7-time NBA All-Star, an NBA Finals MVP, and a Boston sports icon. His jersey today hangs in the rafters at the Garden, and ladies and gentlemen, JoJo is with us tonight. JoJo, can you stand up? Before I turn the podium over to Pat, you should know that after that game, he went into the Texas Western locker room to shake hands with the winners. An act of grace, which is the hallmark of a true sportsman. To quote Bruce Springsteen, Pat's favorite artist, and mine as well, on that night, Pat Riley walked like a man. Pat?
Thank you, Glenn, and to everybody here. I just appreciate that wonderful Massachusetts Boston Celtic ovation. And to JoJo White, just love you to death. Anytime you have an opportunity to come back in years and to be next to somebody that you competed against. I was on the bench, he was playing, but and to watch him win a world championship again against the Phoenix Suns back in 1975, a team that I played on, but it's great to see you. A man or woman's greatest fear is their fear of extinction. But what they fear more than that is to one day become extinct with insignificance. And that means a lot to me. It means that people somewhere in their life, matter and count. And I think what the Hutchins family has done, obviously, for Harvard and for this center is what I'm talking about. It's not just the money, it's about what counts and matters in their life above and beyond that. You see, I truly believe that I've listened to Mr. West. I've listened to Mr. Gates. I've listened to Mr. Evans. I've listened to Glenn. I've listened to everybody here. I have listened to my father, who was a coach his whole life. I had 8 other coaches in my life. And the only people that I ever had in my life that were coaches and mentors and people who taught me about what it would take to be part of something that could be bigger than themselves. I have been around sports, the Toy Department of Human Affairs for well over 50 years. 50 years, and I mean that Toy Department of Human Affairs, but it means something to me. It matters and it counts to me. And it mattered and it counted to what Willie Worsley did and David Lattin did and Texas Western did back in 1966. There's a great line, and I'll never forget it because my wife gave it to me the night before I became the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, very ill prepared for the job. I was always told by my coaches, don't worry about it, one day they will push you through the door, it will just happen. You will not think you will be prepared for it, but you will be. And it happened to me in 1982, and the night before I was to sit in front of, or stand in front of, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic Johnson and Michael Cooper and Jamal Wilkes and Norm Nixon, already a team that had won a world championship and great players in their own right. I was to stand up in front of them and say something to them and make a point to them about what counted and what I believed in. And she said, it's very simple, Pat. You simply have to say, a house divided against itself surely will not stand. That's a biblical truth. It's not only a biblical truth, but it's a truth by the great Abraham Lincoln, who made that comment back in the 60s when he was conflicted with a house divided, a country divided, a people divided against itself surely will not stand, when he was talking about half free and half slaves. I didn't realize what I was saying that night to the players in Los Angeles. But that was my opening statement. I said to them, you're either with me or you're against me. You're either with them or you're with us. You're either in or out. You have to understand that the only way that you're ever going to get anywhere as a group or as a team is you have to get out of yourself and you have to get with the program, whatever the program is. And once you understand what the program is, you have to understand when you get out of yourself, you have to get all of those other people that are with you to get out of themselves and get with the program also. Getting people to do the things they don't want to do in order to achieve what it really means to be successful is the most difficult thing that I ever had to do as a coach with players. To be able to create an environment in which you can truly flourish for everybody in true equality. You know, back in 1862 or 1865 or whenever the Emancipation Proclamation was written, you know, to today, you always have to think about, has there been an environment that truly has been created for everybody to be equal? We have made some gains along the way, but no. I'm a white man, 50 years in a sport, standing up in front of black athletes sweating in their underwear. I know more about them than anybody. I know more about what they believe in than anybody. I have been living with them, playing with them, competing against them, competing with them, coaching with African American players my whole life. Here, when I walked out of the room downstairs, Glenn was talking to me. Here, we don't talk about a basketball game. We talk about the game. The game. It doesn't mean anything else other than the game. It doesn't make any difference who you're playing against. It's the game. The only thing I know are players. That's all I've ever been around are players or teammates or competitors. Players. Black or white, they were players. And I've been so fortunate in my lifetime to be able to be around people who have been truly successful and could teach me. When I say a greatest fear is your fear of extinction, but to become extinct one day with insignificance, I truly believe that somewhere along the way, I know everybody on this stage, I know all of them, and I know Pam Grier. Not really, but I know her. I was playing for the Lakers in the 70s when she was, splitting cement and coming to the Forum Club. We go back a long way, but I never met her. But her life mattered and counted, there's no doubt about it. Everybody on this stage, they did something that mattered and counted. All the years that I was in the NBA from 1966, somewhere in some arena, in some corridor, in some vomitory, somewhere as I was walking out to the bus, a hand would come out and say, "Hey, Pat." And I would look, and I might see Willie Worsley. I'd go somewhere else, and there'd be some, "Hey, Pat," and it was Willie Cager. And I'd go somewhere else, and somewhere along the way, it was Neville the Shadow Shed. And then I'd go somewhere else. I didn't have to go somewhere else because I competed against David Lattin in the NBA for years. Bobby Joe Hill, Orsten Artis. 7 black African-American players in 1966. There was a team of 12, I believe. There were 5 other guys on the team. They happened to be white. There's nothing, one Mexican, I'm sorry. The media had fun with that, but when you talk about those names and you think about people, who have broken or people who have been part of breaking through racial barriers in the 20th century, we can think about, and also I think we know about, Jackie Robinson and Jesse Owens and the first human rights salute back in 1968 when Tommy Smith and Juan Carlos, dropped a fist in the air. We do remember that. We do remember Muhammad Ali and his stand against everything that was wrong. I lived during the 60s. I was a prodigy of that time. I remember a South African rugby team. It was a World Cup, first time in the Nelson Mandela area in 1995. Hank Aaron hitting 714 home runs to beat Babe Ruth. Joe Louis versus Max Schmeling in 1938 to do something that was absolutely so significant because we were in the throes of this incredible hatred and war of a man that was going to make a nightmare of our world if we didn't put him away. Tiger Woods, the first black man to win a Masters in 1997. Jack Johnson, the first heavyweight champion, the first black man heavyweight champion. Ernie Davis, first Heisman Trophy winner as a black African American. Michael Jordan in 1984 with Air Jordan, the first time a black African-American athlete began to market himself in a way that nobody else could, and to this day that most are now following him. Althea Gibson, 1956 Grand Slam, first African-American woman to win that. Those people, broke through these racial barriers at a time when it was almost impossible. Significance, extinction, matter, counts. It was simply very simple. It was simple. You don't want to be considered just the best of the best. You want to be considered the only ones who do what you do. You want to be able to separate yourself from the pack. And you want to be able to one day become unique, to become significant, and to one day separate yourself and leave footprints. It was proud. I was proud to be part of that game in 1966. At that time, I wanted to do nothing but win. I had no other thoughts on my mind but winning. I didn't know there were 5 black players that were going to be starting for Texas Western. I knew my team. I didn't really care about that situation. And I truly believe, when you go back in time, and I remember when Bob McAdoo played for me in 1982. Bob McAdoo was one of the greatest players in the history of the NBA. He was an NBA MVP. He was a scoring leader. We won a championship together in 1982, and I'll never forget the day he walked in and he met with me for the first time. And he said, "I remember that game, Coach. I remember that game in 1966. I was from North Carolina, and I was thinking about going to school, and I wanted to go to North Carolina, but there was no way I was going to go to North Carolina because North Carolina would not take black players. I was going to have to go up east." I never, ever forgot that game because it was what those men did in 1966 with a white coach and Don Haskins that broke through. Willie tells me that he didn't have any other feelings other than, "I just wanted to whip your ass," period. He wanted to win. That's what Don Haskins would tell him. And they did something, and Bob McAdoo was right. The very next year, players began to go to all kinds of schools in the South. There were no black athletes in the SEC or the ACC or the Southwest Conference. There weren't any. And then after Texas Western won that infamous game in 1966, the watershed game, the floodgates just opened. And players began to go, and they became successful, and they became superstars, and became All-Americans. And it was one small step, but it was a big step. And I am proud today. I was really upset that night, but I am proud today. I truly am. I'm proud today to be part of that moment. Glenn earmarked me as a winner. I've won a lot of games and I've won a lot of championships, but I will always be attached at the hip with those guys as the biggest loser in the history of mankind, okay? I tell you that right now, and I'm proud of that moment. I truly love them, and I've spent a lot of time with them in the past. This is not the first time I've seen them since that game. All of the time that they would be celebrated in Texas, it seemed as though after they won the championship, every year they had a reunion. And for some reason, they'd call Pat. "Pat, come on down here, be our foil for, let everybody know how it felt, and I declined a lot of those invitations, but it's just a great honor, for me to be here. It's, we all lived through, and I know W.B. Du Bois. I never read him. until recently, but I do know he's been in my life. As I mentioned the names, prior to that, they've all been in my life. Those voices have all been in my life. All those coaches and all those mentors that have anything to do with coaching, sports, have mentors and teachers and people they've read and have taught to them, they have been in their life. Unbeknownst to me, that house divided against itself is standing. It's standing strong, and it will forever stand strong. And I just want to congratulate Texas Western. And I know that medal, that honor, is going to hang in the office of the president, forever. She is here tonight in the front row of UTEP. And I just want to... I just want to invite both Willie and, we have a film. I guess we have a film that will work. Oh, this is going to make it even worse. Okay, now it's going to really rub it in right now. Let's go. We have a film, that's right. We have a film of a few of the players. It's great. I've listened to it.
We experienced a lot of racism during that season. We went to places like West Texas State, and we had a lot of racism there. I mean, people would call you names, and people would spit at you, and people would try to trip you up because they had this real narrow sidelines. And it was a time in our lives when we should have had the best time of our lives. But it was a time in our lives when we were feeling so much pressure as far as the racial pressure that we weren't having a good time. It was more of a job than it was recreation.
The fans were white, the referees were white, the reporters were white, the guys serving the hot dogs were white. And the initial thought was, that we really have a chance here, And my thought was, first, what am I going to do to stay in the game? Because knowing that if I foul out, get in foul trouble, then I could not help my team, and we had a good chance to lose.
They would call us, the fans would call us niggers, coons, bucks, all kind of derogatory names. And even now, when I think about it, it draws up stuff within me it doesn't feel good.
I guess the one story that really stuck in my head is when someone said that, just stay up with them. Just stay up with that Texas Western team. Because if you get them on the hot line, they're gonna fold. Black athletes cannot hold up under pressure. Just stay close to them. And when I heard that particular thing, or the things that they said we could not do, I didn't say, well, I'm gonna go out there and show them, because we have done those things so many times. That's what got us there, showing the poise, showing the character. We were not an I team, we were a we team. Everybody knew what the other person had to do. We knew that Bobby Joe Hill was our leader. We knew that David Lattin, that was the powerhouse to our team. We knew that Harry Flournoy was the big rebounder. We knew that Austin Artis was the smooth shooter. And I hope they knew that when my turn came to go on the floor, that there was a job for me to do. And we had so much confidence in each other. That's what made that team such a good, strong team. The athletes of colors, we were very unique. Personalities were different, but there we were a team. And today, thanks be to God, we still have that same type of a feeling for each other. We are that we team, not the I team. That's what makes a championship team.
To the we team right down there. the WEB Medals honor. David Ladden and Willie Worsley. Congrats.
And ladies and gentlemen, the president of UTEP University.
I came to represent all the short people. And I'm really glad that Pat Riley's gotten over this, aren't you? I think it's terrific. I think it's terrific. I just want to say how grateful we are for this recognition. The University of Texas at El Paso, which used to be Texas Western College, changed its name 1 year after winning the national championship, which in today's branding terms would be a big mistake. But we are proudly the University of Texas at El Paso. We celebrated our 100th birthday a couple of years ago, and we are now 80% Mexican American. Our 24,000 students represent another population that is dealing with many issues. And so in 1966, these wonderful guys who have been so much a part of our story changed the face of intercollegiate athletics, and we think that in 2016, we are 50 years later, changing the face of higher education and bringing in many more Latinos who are going to find their place too. Thank you so much.
Pat, you can't walk away, man.
Excuse me. Just trying to give you room.
Oh, okay. You know, I am so pleased to be here, and I'm excited. It's great to be on stage with such distinguished guests. I want to thank the university and thank the committee for inviting us here. We're all having a great time. There's really nothing else to say. Pat said everything. Took my words away. But it's great to be here, and thank everybody for attending, and hope to see you all soon.
I have to lower this. First of all, I want to thank all the players on our team for putting us here. Without them, we would not have been here. I want to thank. And on behalf of all the wonderful people here, including Pam, you know, we really enjoyed ourselves. Thank you. I'll do it again.
On behalf of President Drew Faust, Glenn Hutchins, and Professor Henry Louis Gates, we again thank you all for being here this evening. And please, let us show our love one more time for all of the 2016 medal winners. We're going to seal this service with a word of prayer and then a song from the Kuumba singers. Let's conclude in the same way that we began, with the words of W.E.B. Du Bois. God pity them that suffer with hunger, with cold, and who even right now suffer through the storm. Pity those whom the world is but a dull toil and whose pleasures are but faded memories. And Lord, pity us too, if we have no sympathy and show no concern for them. Pity us if we are not willing here in these halls to dedicate our lives to lessening their sorrow and to uprooting their poverty and pain. And may we, O God, like those who we have honored here today, commit ourselves to the broadening of life and to the extension of living life more abundantly for all human souls. This is our prayer. This is our humble petition. Amen. Please receive the Kuumba Singers of Harvard College.
Give it up for the Kuumba Singers, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes our program. Good night. Thank you very much.